the Mitsubishi Outlander.
Every day is a new chance for you to win at Subway. Just fuel up with a sub and select a drink and you can win a great daily prize. Plus, go in a draw to win a VIP trip to Hawaii to hang with Paco and Laura. So, get into Subway today.
With only a week of campaigning in Queensland 2015, the leaders are face-to-face for the first time. Newman and Palaszczuk will slug it out, fielding questions from undecided voters, live and unscripted. The Sky News Courier Mail People's Forum, Friday.
So now anything could happen.
Despite increased security measures across Europe, there are, of course, no guarantees.
Australian pro golfer Robert Allenby says he is lucky to be alive after he was bashed, robbed and kidnapped in Hawaii.
The national terrorism alert level specific to police has been raised from medium to high.
Our officers need to be safe and secure.
Delivering unrivaled live coverage. This is Sky News Live, Australia's news channel.
Good evening, welcome to the program, our first for 2015. January is traditionally a month in Australian politics where nothing much happens. Most Australians are at the beach, they're tuning out, we don't hear a great deal from our politicians. This year, however, this political year has started early, and it hasn't started particularly well for the Abbott government. We've had a partial back down on the Medicare changes, a partial back down on the higher education changes, and today the Prime Minister even urging his colleagues to rally behind him as he copped some questions over his leadership. Meanwhile, in Queensland, it's been a very busy political start to the year with a state election campaign underway in January, the first time that's happened in more than 100 years in Australia. Joining us tonight to look at all of this and the year ahead, Paul Fletcher is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Communications. John Whelan, former Senior Labor Advisor to a number of people, Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Kim Beazley as well. Kate Carnell, former ACT Chief Minister and now Chief Executive of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And Stephen Jones is the Shadow Assistant Health Minister. Thank you all for being here tonight and Happy New Year to you all.
You too.
Let me start with that question that popped up today, leadership. The Prime Minister said today that suggestions that he should stand down before the election are complete nonsense. So, Paul Fletcher, will he be there at the election?
Yes, he will be. And, you know, it's not called the silly season for nothing. What a silly question to ask, and what a silly question to even have to be contemplating answering.
Yeah.
Look, Tony Abbott is doing a tough job and he's doing it well. He has the support of his colleagues. Of course he has the support of his colleagues. This is a government, the Abbott government, that's getting on with necessary reforms to fix the mess that we were left by the previous government. Some of those are difficult. But we are working hard to do the things that need to be done. We've got a lot done, the carbon tax repealed, the mining tax repealed, and we're working on issues.
I can see why you say it's a silly question, because there really is, as far as I'm aware, no serious talk even within the party at the moment. But you must acknowledge that there is nervousness, there is concern amongst your colleagues about where things are at and what they've heard in the electorate over the break and what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in the start to this year. What sort of feedback did you get over the break?
Look, I've certainly been consulting in my electorate, as all of my colleagues have, both formally and around the shopping centres and so on. People want us to keep working, keep doing the things we're doing. Of course, you get feedback as a politician. You get lots of feedback. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. That's part of the rich beauty of the Australian democratic system.
Was it any worse this time than usual?
No, I don't think so. But what I do think is people want us to be clear about what we're doing. Look, have people said, well, why did you come out and do one thing and then change your mind and so on? But the key thing is where we've been proceeding with a measure, and I'm talking particularly about, for example, the Medicare reforms, that's driven by the need for getting the sustainability of the system working.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. I want to talk more about...
But my point is, you obviously need to balance that up with consultation, and we've shown a willingness, indeed a commitment to be consultative, and that's important.
John Whelan, let me ask you, because from the Labor perspective, you've seen a lot of this leadership talk. Once the genie's out of the bottle...
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
No, we have a clue. Once the genie's out of the bottle, it can be really hard to stuff it back in. What's the right answer for a Prime Minister who cops that on 3AW. We're there with Neil Mitchell this morning. Are you going to be there? Are you going to stand down before the election? What's the right answer to that for a Prime Minister?
David, there probably isn't a right answer. The best thing to happen is not to have the question asked.
Yeah.
But of course, if the backbench is a bit nervous, especially the marginal seat MPs, the question will keep on being asked. That's what's happening right now. He has to soldier on as best as he can. My sense is he's got a real trust issue, and it's very hard to regain that trust once it's lost. And the marginal seat MPs are the first ones who will start to feel the effects of that. So I suspect that we'll keep hearing these drumbeats, and I suspect they're going to get a little bit louder as well.
Well, I guess if things don't improve, they may well. Kate, it's a chicken and egg thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The best answer is to have a better polling number to back you up.
That's absolutely
But if you don't have a better polling number, you're going to keep getting these questions.
Look, there's two things that need to happen. One is that the backbenchers, and for that matter some of the frontbenchers, need to stop talking to the media, and there's certainly a little bit more...
I couldn't agree with you on that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Alan. No, I understand that problem. But, you know, that's a real problem, and it certainly has started to happen. There's no doubt about that. And polling numbers turning around will solve the problem. Getting a few of the reforms through the Senate would help. But you know, the comments you made right up front, they're backing down on things. What they are is negotiating. Now, negotiating means you've got to give a bit. What's the difference between negotiating and backing down? Not much. Really, is there?
No, it is as part of a negotiation you back down, I suppose, and that's what they're doing. But it's been confusing, hasn't it? Because we'll take the higher education issue this week. One day you've got the Treasurer, Joe Hockey, saying, no, we're not going to make any changes. The next day you've got Christopher Pyne saying, well, yes, we are willing to give up a big chunk of it.
Well, but just on that, can I make the point that when Christopher reintroduced the legislation just before Christmas, included in the reintroduced legislation, the reintroduced bill, was several measures that the crossbench senators had proposed. So, for example, Senator Madigan had proposed a 5-year pause on the indexation of the HECS bill if you're a primary carer of a newborn. Sensible policy. We were very pleased to take that on board. So the point I'm making is that
there were some changes at the end. And the other one was the interest rate that was going to change.
That's right. So,
you're not going to do that. But then this week came the big one, which is the 20% cut. And Chris Pyne saying we may not do that.
What I'm saying is that Christopher Pyne has made it clear that we are there to negotiate with the crossbenchers. And I might add, we would happily negotiate with Labor if Labor were behaving responsibly and engaging on the incredibly important higher education package, so vital to this sector.
Let's talk about this higher education. Stephen Jones, let me bring you in on this. Do you accept there is a need to better fund universities?
Yeah, we believe that there is a need to better fund universities, and that's why the 20% cut to the university system shouldn't go ahead. And can I make the same point about the university policy proposals as all the rest of it? Because the problem that Tony Abbott and his government has is not the health policy in isolation or the Medicare plans. He's got the wrong plan for the country. The people have worked that out. They're telling the backbenchers. The backbenchers are working that out, and they're starting to talk to people within the media. So you can hardly do what Eric Abetz did today, frankly, and start bagging the backbench when it's the government's plan for the country that is the fault.
All right, well, let's look at the plans, though, because this is at the core of it. If you need to better fund universities, what's the way to do it, if not allowing them to charge more?
And remember, cuts were made by the previous government as well to university
over
funding.
$6 billion was cut out of the university system by the previous government.
On top of record increases to funding of the tertiary education
and a real breakdown of trust,
which you guys criticised us for at the time, by the way. So, look, we think the government has to play its share, and the HECS system is paying its share as well. But one of the things we wouldn't be doing is saying to people, if you want to start a career and if you want a university education, you've got to face $80,000 to $100,000 degrees. We think that is the wrong plan for the country. It's the wrong plan for higher education.
This is the issue, that there's been a complete failure to engage by Labor. You know, Maxine McHugh, a former Labor parliamentary secretary, has said this week that Labor should be engaging on these issues. Labor should be part of the debate. But Labor has completely refused to engage.
Can I make this point to you, Paul? It's very difficult for you to stand here or in the Parliament and demand that Labor vote for a policy and that Labor engage on a policy that you yourselves not only did not have the courage to take to the last election, but denied you were going to do. There's a breakdown in democracy here. You said you were not going to do this, and now you're demanding that we get on board and support it.
We are putting forward a plan to provide growth in the university system, to provide 80,000 additional places and to provide sustainability in the university system. This is so important to our future. And for a major party to just refuse to engage,
why does it?
We're not refusing to engage.
Let me just ask you this.
We're just not going to support you in breaking your election promises.
There's been a suggestion from Nick Xenophon and others on the crossbench of back that there'd be a lengthy inquiry of 12 to 18 months. Now, whether you think you need that long or not to make your mind up on this, surely for students who are right now, this week, deciding what they're going to study, they deserve to know, don't they, what they're going to be charged for that degree before they actually enrol?
Look, I think one of the things that's really important is they need to know that they're going to get a job at the other end. And one of the great dilemmas...
Well, you never know that for sure.
Well, sorry, you can be moderately confident if the universities are producing the graduates that the business sector needs, that there's some show that if you're half good at your degree, you're going to get a job. One of the dilemmas with the debate at the moment is a thing that really needs to change is we need to get a better connection between the degrees that are being offered by university and the jobs that exist.
Yeah, and that's a good point, but it's kind of a separate argument
sorry, it's
to
not,
this.
because the policy actually does that.
Right.
That's one of the
The
things...
deregulation allows a university to...
And also a significantly better amount of information available to parents.
But the question I'm asking you is about the timing, right? So wouldn't it be better to put this off a little bit so at least students enrolling today know what they're going to be paying in year 3 of their degree?
Well, but that's an issue. On that argument, you'd put off attempting this reform forever. This is an important...
No, until the 4th year.
But if you say, well, there's no certainty as to how it's going to play out, so let's put it off because we need certainty on pricing this year and next year and so on. The key thing is there is a significant package there. We've indicated that we're open to negotiation on it, but it's important to move forward so we can get more funding into the university system and we can provide more places in the university
John, what do you think about this whole university, higher education debate? Is there room for some form of further price control by the unis?
Look, I'm actually not sure why we're having the debate. I mean, and one thing in terms of timing is that it does occur to me that the timing of this debate was post the last election, so we didn't really hear anything in relation to it. So there's no mandate for it at all. We'll spend $37 billion on higher education over the next 4 years. We're a $1 trillion US economy. Surely in a free trade world, educating our people to take best advantage of the free trade opportunities should be a priority. So on that basis, why are we pricing people out of that opportunity? I think it's odd, and the fact that we're doing it of its own accord doesn't make sense, and the fact that it's been done without a mandate is what is really driving people to be concerned.
That's a very confusing argument, which seems to completely ignore the fundamental problem that the university leaders themselves are saying they need a new source of funding. Now, you could give us the typical Labor answer, which just says, oh, well, raise taxes, government can pay for everything. But this is about saying university students get significant individual value out of a degree as society gets value out of it, and it's reasonable that there should be the capacity to somewhat to have fees that meet market conditions, bearing in mind that the fees are being charged to people who get a benefit from them.
But the market conditions that we're talking about, sorry, Kate, really quickly, the market conditions that we're talking about in a free trade environment, it's a certainty that Australian potential students will become price takers to prices being set somewhere else. Now, that can't be good for our own people. So we can have the debate, but at the moment...
So your fear is that what the American universities and others charge is immediately what will happen here?
I don't think it will happen immediately, but it will happen over the time. The economics of it are such that it will happen. So I can't figure out why, notwithstanding what the university sector actually wants, and we should certainly engage with them, but to have policy settings of being pro-free trade, I'll congratulate you on signing the free trade agreements, very important, job well done. But to have a pro-free trade environment and also deregulating university fees, it's actually very dangerous.
But just to tease that out, why would they necessarily follow
the
the prices in the US? I mean, the bulk of their students are still going to come from here. Yes, there's an international portion of the student makeup, but the bulk, I don't know the percentage, but it's still always going to be domestic.
That's right.
And David, you made a really important point there that the international market will, I think, have an impact upon the prices. That's an absolute upper limit for the Australian fees, and we compete with China, with a whole range of universities in our region on a price base. So Australian universities can't be more expensive than universities in Beijing and a range of other places in our region, which means that prices can't just go over the edge. The problem we've got, or a positive we've got an uncapped demand-driven system. In other words, if there's demand for university degrees, they will exist they will happen in the current system. That's going to drive the cost of our university sector up significantly. Universities say they don't have enough money in an uncapped demand-driven system. We don't want to go back to
that
system.
point, just on that point, Stephen Jones, do you acknowledge that the uncapping of places, which Labor did, has seen numbers swell in universities?
Yes, and each of those additional students, each of those additional places attracts funding from both the Commonwealth and from the students. That's not that the students do make a contribution. It's completely fallacious to say that students aren't currently making a contribution to their education. They are currently making a contribution.
But has that growth
we just
in
don't
numbers...
think we should take the cap off university fees so that we are saddling students when they graduate with astronomical debts that they will not be able to.
Let's just focus on that scare story, for example, because what we've heard from Labor is a continuing scare story. But let's just look at the fees that Queensland University of Technology put out last year, for example. $30,000 for nursing and
$100,000 degrees.
But what we're going from a scenario where the Commonwealth pays...
Let's have some policy.
Let's just hear from Kate.
So what we're going from is from a situation where the Commonwealth pays 60% and the student pays 40% to a situation where the Commonwealth pays 50% and the student pays 50%. That's the change we're talking about. It's not a huge change. It's just suggesting that if we are going to have an uncapped system, so we're going to have, as many university, degrees as there are young people who want to go to university and have hopefully the capacity to do it. If we want that system, a 50-50 split doesn't seem all that unreasonable.
And to pick up another important point that Kate made, this point about universities being responsive to where there is a demand for qualifications, because we only had half the job done with the number of places being uncapped, and that was a good thing to do.
Yes.
But we then had the problem that the universities had no control, no flexibility over the prices they charged, so they couldn't be responsive to different demand conditions. The underlying logic here is let's give the universities greater flexibility in the way they operate, bearing in mind they are subject to competitive pressure, which is something that seems to get continually missed. No university is free to price without limit when students have a choice of any of the other Australian universities to go to. So they'll be operating in a competitive market.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the legislation, they cannot charge more than what they're charging the international students.
That's
right. That's one of the elements that's been added. That's correct, yeah.
Can I just make this point, David, and I think it's actually one that all, if not most of us, will agree on. We are talking not about a small reform, but a significant reform to a critical part of not only the education system but the economy as a whole. If it was so important, why didn't one of the most senior members in the government's opposition put it before the people in the lead up to the last election?
He was the higher education minister. You said nothing about the carbon tax and brought it in.
It's not as if there wasn't a debate about how we tackle climate change over the course of the 42nd Parliament. It's not as if there wasn't a debate. There was not a debate about higher
All right,
education.
well, that is true, though.
over
There
the
wasn't
course of the
anything
43rd
said.
Parliament. Where were they on it? They weren't there.
The position of Labor
it was
is
either
that
they weren't
there's
thinking
no
about it
preparedness
or it
to
was a secret
engage
plan.
on the policy area of higher education over a 3-year period.
We are engaging on it. We are engaging on it.
Paul Fletcher, do you take that point,
issue.
though? This is a big reform and nothing was said about it.
It's a significant reform, and that's why we've been going through a major process last year of consultation. We've taken it to the reps in the Senate once. We've now modified it in the reps, and the Minister has indicated a preparedness to
Before we leave this, Holly, let me ask you this, because the signs this week are the crossbench still aren't happy. They just don't like deregulation at all. What do? Do you fold the tent on this one and say, OK, we tried? Do you stick with it? Do you put it up for another vote?
Well, clearly that's the plan that Minister Pyne is working to. No, we're not just going to give up. I mean, he's shown great persistence and determination because this is important, and because all of the key stakeholders in the university sector, Universities Australia, the G8 and so on.
And I have to say the business sector as well wants the reforms to happen.
Yeah, there's a very strong policy case for this change, and it's a reform that is necessary, and that's why we're pursuing it.
I was just going to suggest, in that case, if the argument's that strong, put together the proposals and seek a mandate.
It would have been a reasonable thing to do.
Put together the proposals and seek a mandate. And just further, Paul,
thanks for the advice. Thanks for the advice.
Well, why not?
Very good.
Why not?
Very happy
Let
to offer
voters
it.
have a say.
We are representing, you guys represent, the Australian Parliament represents about 21 million people. They are entitled to know, especially in the context of a Prime Minister who pre the election promised no lies and no surprises. And there's a curiosity as to why he's got a
trust issue. Is that an option,
issue.
Paul Fletcher?
Well, I think it's a fair piece of advice. Take it if you like.
This just sounds to me like a good Labor excuse for refusing to engage on an important reform because they don't want to tell the Australian people the scale of the mess that they've left, the scale of the debt.
But what's the urgency on this? Because the way it's been watered down now, you're not going to save a lot on the budget bottom line. A bit,
look,
but why not just wait until after the election?
It's not fundamentally a budgetary issue.
No.
That's a part of it, but it's fundamentally.
So why the rush?
It's fundamentally
why does this have to happen
making the universities flexible and responsive. Look, the university sector is absolutely critical to Australia's prosperity and competitiveness
Something
and performance.
we all agree on.
But we knew this last year. We knew this before the election.
Look at a company like Cochlear, for example, $900 million in exports, commercialising technology developed at the University of Melbourne.
We agree on all of this.
And so these are the reasons why it is important to have a flexible, dynamic, competitive university system. And we have a system
that
in
we
the
knew all
words
of that
of
before
its
the election.
leaders,
Why didn't we hear anything about it before the election? And now suddenly it all has to happen in this term before you have a chance to go to the voters again.
All governments want to make a difference.
These are important. These are important issues, and we're progressing with these issues. We've consulted widely across the sector. We are engaging with the crossbenchers. We'll be happy to engage with Labor should they be prepared to engage. This is important policy that
you
we're
just
taking
don't want
forward.
to put it to a vote. You just don't want to put it to an election.
It's been to a vote in the Senate once, and we'll take it back to a vote again.
The electors, the
well,
electorate.
Look, of course, everything that government does is ultimately subject to a vote.
Except this.
There's a general election every 3 years. I mean, people can put their views.
Yeah, but you want it done before then. You want to get it done before then.
We want to get the university system operating to its best potential as quickly as we possibly can.
And we do want governments to get on with the job, don't we?
Well, that's true.
Do.
We also want young Australians to go to university.
Why don't the
Of course,
Australian people have a
we want young Australians
and not to be priced out.
And under this measure,
not to be
there
priced out of the
will be
market.
80,000 new places available, new Commonwealth-funded places available. This is about expanding the size of the system.
So that still stays, even if you don't have the 20% cut? All those scholarships stay?
More Australians can participate in higher education.
Hopefully they're degrees that actually business wants and can employ the people.
Absolutely. Funding by 20% to ask business what they want their universities to produce. We've been doing that for decades and presumably will continue to do it. We do it now. You did it. We did it. We will continue to do it.
It's failed.
A quick break and then something else that business is pretty keen on, industrial relations reform. Stay with us.
Australia's biggest stocktake sale is in its final days. Take a further 30% off the already reduced price of red-ticketed women's, men's and children's clothing, footwear, intimate apparel, handbags and homewares. Cannot be used with other offers. Ends Monday. Don't miss out.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to California.
Say hello to fresh Eclipse mints.
Imagine that peace of mind begins with comfort, the comfort of stressless.
Imagine the luxury of leather at a fabric price. Purchase any stressless leather recliner or sofa this month and only pay the standard fabric price. Visit stressless.com.au.
Welcome to the BMW New Year Revolution. Start your new year on the right foot with free on-roads across a range of ultimate driving machines. Plus, you'll also feel more connected to the road ahead with free concierge services, free real-time traffic information and free internet as part of BMW Connected Drive. Join the BMW New Year Revolution today.
Sometimes you don't have much time to talk.
No, I can talk now.
And sometimes you do. iiNet now offers mega-fast broadband, local and national calls and calls to mobiles for only $79.90 a month. Talk forever. Talk often.
You know, Progressive gives you discounts for owning your own home, insuring more than one car, paying up front and being claims-free. Hence, our clever little acronym. Oi imtok puff bakaf.
Saving you a mouthful. Now that's Progressive.
To be a trader, you need that spark inside. The courage, vision, and determination. The eye to see opportunity, and the wit to seize the right one. IG.
Right now, at David Jones, take an extra 25% off the already reduced price on a range of women's, men's and children's fashion, shoes and accessories. Get it before it's gone. The David Jones clearance ends Monday. David Jones.
The Productivity Commission accidentally today released a series of issues papers on industrial relations reform. It was meant to come out tomorrow. Someone pressed the button a bit early, I think. Anyway, issues like penalty rates, the minimum wage, labour market flexibility, all being considered by the Productivity Commission in an inquiry that the Coalition promised before the election. Paul Fletcher, why are we having this inquiry? What's the point?
Well, it was part of our policy in May 2013. We released a workplace relations policy. So we're now taking action to commence this review. The Productivity Commission, very well respected body, provider of impartial economic advice.
And remind us why you want the inquiry?
Well, because we want to have a calm, fact-based look at our workplace relations system. So it's looking at some 26 different issues, a whole range of issues, fair and equitable pay and conditions for employees.
And do you just want to look, or do you want to actually do something?
Well, the Productivity Commission will then come forward with a set of recommendations to government. It's been asked to do that. So we'll wait and see what those recommendations are.
And will you do anything with it?
Well, let's wait and see what the recommendations are, but this is obviously an exercise in having a very careful look at the workplace relations system, which is central to our economy.
It's not just an exercise in keeping quiet all of those in your party and the business community who want change, despite your reluctance to go down that political path.
I think you need merely look at the track record of Productivity Commission reviews. They've been used by the previous government to come up with the NDIS, for example, National
They had a good look at childcare and paid parental leave too.
And so there's a strong track record over many years of Productivity Commission reviews
being ignored.
And not every one of them is picked up, of course, but there's a very strong track record of Productivity Commission reviews becoming the basis for significant policy.
What was Barnaby Joyce's quote on the Productivity Commission? I'm just trying to remember. It was last year, and it was a reference to toilet paper.
That's right.
Anyway,
yes.
Kate Carnell, tell us what business is hoping for out of this.
Oh, look, what business is hoping for is some real reform that means that our industrial relations law actually reflects what workplaces look like today and into the future. Where we've got a workplace relations scenario now that is really back before Hawke and Keating. Unfortunately, what often happens with pendulums is that work choices, we believe, went a bit too far. What we want to do is move it back to, say, around about 1996. We thought that was about right, but unfortunately it swung significantly back.
What's the practical example of that? What specifically needs to change?
Look, one of the things that particularly needs to change is, particularly for small to medium businesses, they need to have the capacity to have arrangements with their staff, individual agreements with their staff. It needs to be easier for them to employ, and also easier for them to get rid of staff that aren't performing.
So the unfair dismissal laws and penalty rates need to change.
And obviously penalty rates are a huge issue as we've become more of a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day.
Is that something the government would consider, would be willing to do?
Well, again, there's 26 issues that are sets of areas that are being examined under this.
And penalty rates, would you be willing?
And penalty rates is one of them.
Would you be willing to move on penalty rates?
We're having a careful look at it, but let's wait.
We'll be putting really a lot of pressure on
Stephen Jones, you must be rubbing their hands with glee at the prospect of a scare campaign on work choices again.
Paul is right on this point. When we asked the Productivity Commission to look at something like paid maternity leave, we did it because we wanted to do something in that space. They've asked the Productivity Commission to look at something, and everything is on the table. That's what's quite clear from what was leaked today. Everything is on the table.
As it should be.
And it's not just base rates of pay, and it's not just penalty rates, and it's not just leave loading and all of those things. Everything is on the table. For thousands, if not millions of workers, we are talking about their take-home pay, their capacity to deal with cost of living issues. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about some abstract notion. This is not an abstract notion about some dusty old act. What we are talking about here is what people take home each fortnight and are able to feed their kids, pay their bills. That's what we're talking about. And yes, penalty rates are a part of that, and basic wages are part of that. It's all a part of that.
To simplistic terms, though, it's also about those who'd like to have a job but are unemployed at the moment too, and whether the system can be made better to give them a chance.
And we saw between the introduction of the Fair Work Act and even throughout the trouble we had with the global financial crisis, we saw phenomenal levels of employment growth. So nobody can argue that workplace relations, but for workplace relations, if we just remove all of these rights and entitlements, we're going to see phenomenal jobs growth in the economy. No, the reason nobody can argue that truthfully is because it is not true. It is not true. And Paul will try and make the case, and he's one of the true believers when it comes to, flat earthing the workplace relations system, and he's been consistent on that. I give him that. I give him credit on that.
There's a union secretary likes more than revving up
in
a good old work choices.
But I just want to make this point. The reason we are deeply
concerned.
concerned.
Warrior's heart beating more.
You'll get your point, mate. You'll get your point. The reason we are so deeply concerned about having everything on the table is it's not just an act of Parliament, it's what people take home in their wallets every week.
But Stephen, can I just understand that? So your preference would be the system's perfect, there's no need for a calm, fact-based examination of the workplace relations system. Absolutely unnecessary.
I listen to the speeches your guys make in Parliament. They are anything but calm or fact-based when it comes to industrial relations.
The Productivity Commission has been tasked with doing this work. But is it your view that the Productivity Commission ought not be asked to look at this? The workplace relations system is perfect, and we should just leave it at
Let's try and break it down to something that people will understand, and that is the penalty rates argument, right? And Kate Carnell is absolutely right. We're in a 7-day economy these days. Why should people get a loading for working on a Saturday or a Sunday?
Because I think a cleaner who starts work when you and I go home and works throughout the night and works a limited number of shifts is entitled to take home in their pocket a decent rate of pay, that they're able to pay their bills. And I think the person that is standing at the checkout serving are entitled to work to earn a decent pay.
Our view is that the penalty rates on Sundays and most public holidays, not Christmas Day and some of the very special ones, should be the same as Saturday. We do actually accept that there is a small
on Australia Day, on Monday, for example.
Can I just
take... You shouldn't get double time and a half.
You shouldn't get double time and a half. You should get what? Nothing? Just
No, you should get the same as Saturdays,
Which is what?
which varies between 1 1/4 and 1.5 times. Depends on the award.
Is that a reasonable position? Why should you get double time and a half?
We set up a system called the Fair Work Commission, which has experts that enables you to adjudicate on these issues, and if there is a legitimate case...
Okay, but if you are a small business, right...
We have a system in place that enables those arguments to be put and to be adjudicated on by independent people on the basis of evidence.
If you run a cafe and you're thinking about whether to open on Monday or not, and your staff, you're meant to pay them 2.5 times, is that reasonable?
Look, I think penalty rate's really important. And I think it's
Well, they stop people opening and employing. They do that.
Well, look, I just don't think that's right. I'm a small business person myself. I'm not employing other people at the moment, but obviously hope to grow. So you factor these things in.
You pay yourself a penalty rate?
I pay myself the best wage I can to keep my business ticking over.
And there are lots of businesses where the people who are running them are the owners, because
and they're often not.
This is where you get to a ridiculous point. The people who are going to be hurt by this are not the ridiculous arguments. The people with 3 degrees who are self-employed. The people who are going to be hurt by this are your cleaners, your retail assistants, your childcare workers. All of those people.
You're not talking about stripping away all of that.
Claim. No. And that's
why we have an independent body to determine those empirical claims. This is about having a careful, fact-based look at these issues. These are complex issues. We want to have a thorough, careful, fact-based look at it and weigh up these claims. The unions were consulted on the terms of reference. The unions will have the opportunity to make submissions, as will individual employees, as will businesses, as will all kinds of people. But Paul, this is a good thing for Australia to have a thorough... The only reason that very measured statement that you have just said is unreasonable is that we have done it every 3 years for the last 35 years. You are saying, you are trying to make the case that this is the first time we've looked at it. We have looked at it every 3 years
on these issues
for the last 35 years.
You're in government for a large proportion of that. Which is the special...
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years for the last 35 years.
The whole thing about the way the Productivity Commission works is it looks at a whole range of areas and brings to bear a calm, measured economic analysis.
And look,
let's do that here.
There's, 17% youth unemployment in Wollongong?
Every 3 years for the last 35 years.
17% youth unemployment or something like that in Wollongong. If you walk down the street on Sunday, you'll see a whole lot of cafes that are closed, and they're closed because they can't afford to be open.
No, they are closed, Kate, because there aren't people with money in their pocket who can come into those cafes and buy a cup of coffee.
Sorry, that's not what the businesses are saying.
They're having to pay double time to open.
Look, your employees are employees,
maybe a cup of coffee would be
who are
cheaper.
earning those penalty rates are also consumers who are going into the shops, who are going into the supermarkets.
Unemployed people can't buy too much coffee or anything. We just need to get people into jobs.
I don't everybody agrees with that, Kate.
Okay, well,
everybody agrees with that.
Let me ask you, Kate, the realpolitik of this. You've been a politician. You're obviously approaching this from the business perspective now, but do you really think there's going to be any move on this?
Look, there desperately needs to be, but it's such a tough issue. It's such a tough issue, and certainly business will be, and I hope lots of other people will be putting forward the view to the Productivity Commission that this needs to change. If the Productivity Commission recommends change to penalty rates, which I'm absolutely confident they will, we would certainly be putting pressure on both sides of politics to take changes to the next election.
All right. Can I make this point, Dave, before we finish? Nobody is making the case from Labor that we should not always look at our industrial relations laws to ensure that they are fit for purpose. But when the answer to employment, or when the answer to the issue is always come after somebody's take-home pay, we become a bit suspicious.
All right, I want to move on because there's still a few more things.
Not that that's prejudging for a second the outcome. Not that that's running a
We're entitled to our suspicions.
The kind of scare campaign that Brendan O'Connor ran in the media release he put out immediately this morning.
Why should somebody who works on Monday and Tuesday get paid less?
Minimum wage rates and penalty rates are on the table. So there is an entitlement to some suspicion given the recent history of work choices.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about the Medicare changes. The government has made some changes too already this year. Getting back to the underlying argument as to why there needs to be change, is there a problem with funding our health system now? Is there going to be in the years ahead? I know we discussed this last time you were here as well. The figure the government uses, and we heard the Prime Minister use it again today, 10 years ago, Medicare was costing us $8 billion. Yep. Today, it's costing $20 billion. Yep. 10 years, it'll cost $34 billion. Labor's response is that, well, it's just rising in line with population growth and inflation. Who's right, who's wrong? Do we have a problem or not?
So, the government has embarked on this whole thing in a very dishonest way, and they're using a dishonest series of numbers. Yes, Medicare is costing around about $19 billion a year today, about twice what it was 10 years ago. But as a proportion of government outlays, it's actually gone down slightly. About
that's largely because government
4.2 to 4.1.
Skyrocketed under
the PBS.
Under the right government.
What an extraordinary rubbish.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it as a proportion of GDP.
It's actually decreased.
Okay, so GDP. You asked this question last time. I did. GDP is up 32% in 10 years.
Where is it now? It's at government spending on health here is 6.4%.
It's about. Health spending in total is around 9%.
Yeah, that's private health spending as well.
Well, that's total system spending.
9.2%.
Is 9.5%.
System spending. But let's look
government spending.
Let's look at this comparison.
6.4%. In the US, it's 8.3%.
So we've gone from $8 billion to $20 billion. Over that same period, I went and looked at the numbers today.
Inflation.
Our population is up 17% over that period. CPI, 31.5% in total over the 10 years. So if you applied those two numbers...
I have to get my calculator.
Well, I did the calculation this afternoon. If you applied those two numbers, we would have gone from $8 billion to $12 billion. In fact, we've gone from $8 billion to $20 billion. Yeah. So I accept the argument that you need to look at the real effect, not the nominal effect, and I accept that. Population growth drives up the cost of the Medicare system, but the key point is...
So you accept the fact that the $8 billion figure being used by the Prime Minister is a bit misleading?
No, it's not.
Very misleading. It's not a bit misleading.
It is a totally accurate figure, but then you need to unpack...
It's accurate, but misleading.
It is totally accurate, and then you need to go back and unpack the drivers, and when you unpack the drivers and say, what's the population growth effect? 17%. What's the CPI effect? 31.5%. Put that together, you'd have gone from $8 billion to $12 billion. In fact, we've gone from $8 billion to $20 billion. So even if, taking Stephen's point, at its highest, growth in Medicare has been well ahead of those drivers.
Do you accept that? Do you accept this is the core point?
Let's take Paul's point at its highest. Yep. Let's take Paul's point at its highest and say, even if he is right, why does the GP tax not use that revenue to backfill Medicare?
Well, it's a separate argument.
It doesn't. No, it's the same argument because if they honestly thought the problem with Medicare was that costs were galloping ahead of revenue,
that's a fair debate.
Why not use the revenue they're seeking to raise?
Ahead of revenue.
Well, costs are going up, and health inflation does go ahead of CPI. It's not a new factor. It has gone ahead of CPI for about 40 years.
So, okay, just to be clear on this, because this is the whole point about whether we need to do something or not. You do accept, Labor does accept, that the cost of our health system is growing faster than population growth and inflation.
Yes, we don't cavil with that, and that's why you always need responsible measures. No, that's why you need responsible measures. You put in place responsible measures to contain and restrain those costs. The pharmaceutical benefit scheme, for example.
So is Labor supporting the co-payment?
Well, it's not.
No, we're not.
It's not a good responsible measure.
Let's look at the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. The single biggest cost saver in the government's budget last year was savings in the pharmaceutical benefit scheme because of measures that Labor put in place that many of your former colleagues didn't like, I should say, which was the accelerated price disclosure. We put that in place to contain costs on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme.
Because the costs were going up exponentially.
We've been doing that. We've done that in terms of the Medicare benefit schedule. You continually review the items.
What we will not accept is taxing sick people. You have a co-payment on pharmaceuticals.
Yes, it was actually introduced by the Menzies government around about 1960. It was about 5 shillings. Yes, check the facts. 5 shillings.
Sorry, the co-payment for pensioners and low-income earners was brought in, I would have thought, under the Labor.
Pretty sure it was 1960, actually.
The co-payment for pensioners
No, I'm talking about the co-payment for, look,
Okay.
for the pharmaceutical benefit scheme. Yes.
Check that. But why is that bad?
Why is it different? Why is it different?
Yep.
Why is it different? Because every cent of that co-contribution goes into the pharmaceutical benefit scheme to help pay for the pharmaceutical benefit scheme.
Your only objection to the co-payment.
No, it's not the only objection.
So if
your argument collapses upon itself.
Let me ask you this, Stephen Jones. If the government put that money from the $5 co-payment into the Medicare system rather than a future fund, then it's okay.
Well, look, we fundamentally have a problem with the GP tax because it breaks down the universality of the provision of healthcare in this country. That's a fundamental problem. It's a system that Labor put in place, and we will defend to the very end because we think it's a fundamental. And you use the figures, David, can I say, about total health spend in Australia versus other jurisdictions. In Australia, around about 9.2%. The US around about 19%.
Yeah, 17.7% total health.
And we've got longer life expectancy in Australia and better health outcomes across just about every measure. Medicare is the envy of the world. Why would you want to stuff it up?
Everything is perfect. Stephen's actually the true conservative at this table. No change is required.
We have continually referred.
Look, let's be clear. First of all, it's not a tax. It is a co-payment. So
Joe Hockey conceded it was a tax.
The current Medicare rebate is $37.05, I think. So today the way it works is if a doctor bulk bills you, you pay nothing. And the $37.05 rebate is paid to the doctor by the government.
Yep.
What will happen in the future is that the doctor will get paid a $32.05 rebate and will be able to bill you the $5. It'll be done in a smooth way so that there's a one-time payment of $5. You don't have to pay it and reclaim it and all that complex stuff. Who will be asked to do that? It'll be those who are not on concession cards, not pensioners, not children under 16. In other words, people like me, and I'd venture to suggest everybody around this table who has a capacity to pay. And why are we doing that? Because we want to send a modest price signal to remind people there is a cost involved in this, and you're going to, we're asking you to pay a small proportion of the total cost of the consultation as part of getting the growth in the total system cost under control.
And John, do you really think that is going to undermine the universality of Medicare? Is it going to stop people going to the doctor?
Yeah, it will.
We're not talking about pensioners here or children.
Yeah, I think it will because price signals do have an impact.
Otherwise, why do you do them?
Absolutely do have an impact.
Because you're sick.
Well.
Yeah, but why do you put in place a price signal if it's not stopping somebody to go to a doctor?
Because people who are sick may not be able to afford to go, and especially if you're going 3, 4, 5, 6 times a month, which some people, for example, say with MS, for example, will have to do that. My problem with this, and it sounds like, by the way, it's still on the table, Paul, and I thought the Minister actually took it off the table, but we'll come back to that in a moment.
There are two separate issues. The co-payment issue, the co-payment has not been taken off the table. The Minister said she's clearly happy to talk to
and she's consulting
the sector and particularly the doctors and other stakeholders about it. But what clearly has changed is the measures to address 6-minute medicine. There was
the $20 cuts off the table. But
I want to follow. This is an important point. You are trying to make out that the people who are going to pay this GP tax are middle-class people. Are you seriously suggesting that middle-class people are going to their GP, taking time out of their busy schedules more than they should, or going there because they think they're not paying? Are you seriously suggesting that a co-payment is necessary to stop middle-class people going to the GP more than they ought to? You couldn't believe that.
The point I'm making is that it's basic economics that people respond to a price signal. It's very well demonstrated. And
let's look at who are the people you are talking about.
It's a general principle that if there's a price signal, it affects your consumption behaviour.
With pharmaceuticals?
Yes. So you want to stop people going to a doctor?
It's a basic principle of economics that applies to every good and service.
I've got to take a break. We're going to stick with this topic though, because I think there's a bit more to go on this. Do stay with us.
Get a slice of paradise when you add juicy pineapple to your Summer Deluxe burgers. They're just made for summer. Burgers are better at Hungry Jack's.
You'll love the thought of new Felix from only $4.790. Now with free smart pockets, free table and free LED light. Hurry, the summer sale is in its last days.
I want to go with you to Berlin. I want to get lost in conversation. And then I want to fall into bed. I just want to find the perfect hotel for us. And I want to book it for the best price. Are you with me? Hotel Trivago.
Not even for a Schmacko's twirls.
That's no Lego for Schmackos.
At Budget Direct, we don't insure Captain Risky to keep prices low. Get 25% off car and 35% off home and contents insurance for a limited time online.
In everybody's digestive system, there's a balance of good and bad bacteria. But everyday diet and lifestyle factors, fatty foods, alcohol and some medications can throw out this balance.
Have you had Urine Health Plus today?
Not everyone dares to be different. Not everyone appreciates bold design. Not everyone wants to lead from the front. The new generation CLS class. Not for everyone.
Right now at McDonald's, buy a Big Mac and get more bang for your buck because it comes with a free small fries and a free small Coke. Yep, get free fries and Coke with your Big Mac at Macca's.
55 years in the business, but new to this seat, starting to like it. In fact, really starting to enjoy it. Mr. Murray, you better watch out. PM Live, Monday to Friday, 9 PM, Sky News.
I want to stick with Medicare for a moment longer. Stephen Jones, you acknowledge that, yes, health costs are rising higher than inflation and population growth to an extent, not to the extent that perhaps the government suggests. But, John Whelan, if that's the case, if we do have a problem here, how should this be dealt with? It's been looked at by Kevin Rudd for more than a year, I think, and various ideas were put forward. What's the answer to this?
Look, we certainly have a sustainability problem. There's no question about it, and it's driven largely by the demographic shift. My problem is that there's a mismatch between the diagnosis of the problem and the solution that's been offered. The problem's large. The GP co-payment, as the main measure that's been offered up, is very narrow and small and punitive, and it doesn't give you the savings that you need. So I'd like to see the government take a leaf out of, say, the Hawke and Keating playbook, sit down, have a summit, put all the issues on the table, whether that be co-payments, whether that be changes in the Medicare levy, in the private health rebate, and then take a leaf out of the Howard playbook and actually put these proposals, have the guts to put the proposals to an election GST style.
What's wrong with that prescription? Paul Fletcher, have a summit and then put it to an election.
Well, certainly you're seeing Minister Susan Lee engaging in consultation.
Behind closed doors.
On a whole range of these issues. But fundamentally, the recommendation on just about every item on the government's agenda from our two Labor representatives here is, oh, well, don't do anything now, just put it off. Just put it off.
Saying that at all.
That'll be fine,
saying
just put it off.
No, Paul, in fairness, I'm saying something very different. I'm actually saying develop a raft of proposals and have the courage to put them forward. Not give us something narrow that prices people out of an early diagnosis, which is a false positive.
So now it seems your objection to the policy is that it's not broad and sweeping enough.
If the problem is sustainability, then find the funding to make it sustainable.
You did mention the Medicare levy. Perhaps that needs to be increased again. Is that something that, Stephen Jones, you think?
I hate to disappoint you, David. I'm not going to be making major policy announcements probably 2 years from the next election on your show tonight. But look, a couple of quick points. It's the wrong plan, addressing the wrong problem. We've just spoken about GPs.
Where's Labor's plan?
We've just talking about GPs.
There's only one party that's got a plan.
GP Medicare costs is around about 9-10%. The big areas that we should be focusing on in terms of overall health costs are not, and they're actually, that's one of the most efficient parts of the healthcare system. There are a lot of other places I'd start to look at if you're looking for efficiencies and savings within the healthcare system before I'd start attacking one of the most efficient parts of the healthcare system.
Just, Kate, I'll finish on this topic. The Medicare levy.
Look, I think we've almost all accepted that the current system is unsustainable, needs some significant surgery. I think a GP co-payment, a small one, $5, is probably a good way to go, but it's not the whole answer. The cost of the system is going up in a whole range of different ways. The demographics are a problem, but also the cost of private health insurance going up at a higher rate than inflation, simply because the cost of health is going up at a higher rate.
If we all agree the cost of health is going up, why not the Medicare levy? We have a progressive tax scale. Isn't that a fairer way to do it?
Well, we're not enthusiastic about new taxes. What we want to find is getting the system working better, and in this case, getting a contribution through a co-payment to a change in
people don't care what you call it.
It's
coming out of their pocket, right? A co-payment, a tax increase, a levy on fuel. It's coming out of someone's pocket.
There's a fundamental difference here. It's a payment clearly linked to you getting the service. That's quite important to the economics of this. That's what a price signal means. Whereas with a tax, it's a generalised payment that everybody bears, regardless of the extent to which you are consuming the service. So
that's just not the point. It price signals you out of the service. That's the point.
Quite seriously,
it price signals you out of the service.
$5 is not likely to do that. For somebody who's not a pensioner, not a concession card holder, because they're not even in the system.
And it's being directed to a whole new area of spending.
We can go around and around. We've only got a few minutes left.
I've got a whole range of excuses for doing nothing. The prescription from the opposition is inaction in government.
Let me ask you all quickly about Manus Island. We've seen unrest there over the last week. People who've been there for roughly 18 months now are being processed, found to be refugees, and I think 2 of them now are on their way to being resettled in the community. This is scaring a lot of the people at Manus Island. They are worried about their safety once they're outside the centre and settled in the community in Manus Island. Stephen Jones, some of your colleagues have said we should stop offshore processing. Do you think we should?
I think we need an inquiry into what's going on at Manus Island. We certainly need a lot more transparency than we're getting. We certainly shouldn't be prosecuting journalists who are our only source of information about what's going on. No, look, I think we've got a policy. And I think the policy settings will remain in place. I think what we've got going on in Manus Island is a clear example of mismanagement.
What is Labor's policy?
We established the offshore process.
So stick with Manus Island.
But we wouldn't have stuffed up the relations with the locals the way that you guys clearly have, and we've put a lot more effort into ensuring those people were processed and resettled. There's been no priority gone into processing and resettling people, and in fact your relations with the local community have been allowed to sour to such an extent that it's making it difficult, if not impossible.
Right, just quickly, because we nearly are out of time. Resettling people in the community seems to be the issue here. Is there a way to make that happen more smoothly?
Well, the first point to make is it is not clear what Labor's policy is, because it's clear that a number of Labor parliamentarians are opposed to offshore
But just quickly, your position, can this be done better, the resettling?
Clearly we need to maintain safety and security within the facility, and then people who are found to be refugees are offered resettlement in PNG so that they are able to get the security they need so that they're not in the place where they have had the well-founded fear of persecution, namely the country from which they left. And so that is the basis on which the policy operates. So if you go to Manus Island, you then have your refugee status assessed. If you are found to be a refugee, that you are then offered resettlement in Papua New Guinea. If you're found not to be a refugee, then of course the option is to return to your place of origin.
We are right out of time. My apologies for that. The clock has beaten us. Clearly there's a lot to talk about in 2015. This is just
We're underway.
Thank you all very much for being with us tonight. Thanks for your company as well. We'll be back same time next week. See you then.
We challenge our diners to put Finish hand dishwashing gel to the test. Come on, go,
It's amazing. Its long-lasting foam powers through tough grease in one wipe.
Perfecto!
It pays to use Finish.
Australia's biggest stocktake sale at Myer is in its final days, with 40% off the original price of Manchester and 40% off the original price of travel goods. Conditions and exclusions apply. Hurry, ends Monday. Don't miss out.
Why do cars matter? Because grand finals matter. Date nights matter. School drop-offs definitely matter. Adventures matter. But sometimes a good night's sleep matters more. Business meetings, birthdays, and best friends. That's what matters. Allianz Insurance. Because it matters.
There are hundreds of sites to search and book a hotel. That's why there's Hotels Combined. With just one search, you can see all prices available, so finding the best deal is easy. Visit Hotels Combined or download our free app today.
To be a trader, you need that spark inside. The courage, vision, and determination. The eye to see opportunity, and the wit to seize the right one. IG.
In my pop-up restaurant, diners eat for free if they can clean my messiest dishes. Welcome! We'll use these to play up. And there is only one way to do it, using the very best Finish Quantum. Come on, go, go, go! Come on, hurry up, let's go!
It's impossible!
Perfection!
Finish Quantum with Power Gel, effective on 100% of tough stains. It pays to use Finish.
Right now, at David Jones, take an extra 25% off the already reduced price on a range of women's, men's and children's fashion, shoes and accessories. Get it before it's gone. The David Jones clearance ends Monday. David Jones.
Sides need real traction with voters, so now anything could happen.
Despite increased security measures across Europe, there are, of course, no guarantees.
Australian pro golfer Robert Allenby says he is lucky to be alive after he was bashed, robbed and kidnapped in Hawaii.
The national terrorism alert level specific to police has been raised from medium to high.
Our officers need to be safe and secure.
Delivering unrivaled live coverage. This is Sky News Live, Australia's news channel.
Good evening, Darren Hinch filling in for a couple more nights for Mr Murray, the regular host, of course, of PM Live. I'm glad my new program starting next week is called Hinch Live and not DH Live, because that would leave me wide open. Think about it. First up tonight, an issue which will leave me open to some criticism and possibly shouts at hypocrites, so let's take it head on. In Perth, women, especially Aboriginal women, are choosing to go to jail rather than pay off thousands of dollars in fines. Now that's precisely what I did last year, and I'll get back to that. One woman racked up more than $30,000 in fines, not for parking, for assault, stealing and breaching bail. She went to jail and in only 12 days had expunged the lot. Apparently in Perth, they jail you only for the biggest fine and the rest are wiped concurrently. But how at $250 a day out west you can wipe 30 grand in 12 days still escapes me. And it costs well over $300 a day to keep a prisoner in jail. To make it worse, since this woman was released from prison with a financially clean slate, she's run up another $30,000 in fines. Now, in my case, I refused to pay a fine. I went to jail last year for 50 days on principle. I didn't believe. And a personal fine of $100,000 for contempt of court was the biggest in our legal history. Unlike the Perth women, I did not spend my time in motel-like accommodation. The first 2 weeks were in maximum security, only a couple of cells away from Jill Maher's killer and also the rapist murderer of the Bega schoolgirls. But while in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, I had plenty of time to calculate that at least I was working the fine off at $2,000 a day, or $83.30 an hour, even in my bunk bed. Out west, people considering going to jail instead of paying fines should remember two names. One is a young woman known as Miss Do. The 22-year-old Aboriginal woman didn't elect to go to jail. She was picked up for failure to pay a $1,000 fine, and she died 3 days later in the police lockup in the Pilbara. The other name is Jamie Partlick. He was a young smart-ass who refused to pay parking fines in Sydney. That was back in 1987. And he's remembered because he was bashed unconscious in Long Bay Jail and died 6 months later. So believe me, doing time instead of paying fines is not a fun option. Now it's time for the news headlines with Suzanne Lattimore.
Darren, thank you. Bali 9 member Andrew Chan's plea for presidential clemency has been rejected. The anticipated rejection letter, which arrived in Denpasar, officially exhausts Chan's legal appeals against his death sentence for drug trafficking. For more, here is Sky News International editor Stan Grant.
Indonesia's President Joko Widodo is taking a hard line against drug traffickers. Just last weekend, 6 were executed by firing squad, and that appears to be the fate now facing Buren Sukumaran and Andrew Chan, the two Australians part of the so-called Bali 9. Now, Chan's appeal for clemency has been rejected, as Sukumaran's was earlier. They've been imprisoned now for nearly 10 years for drug trafficking. During that time, those close to them, their lawyers, even the Australian government, has attested to how much they have been rehabilitated, how much they've been reformed, how remorseful they are. That has been the basis of their claim for clemency. But still, that has been rejected. Where does it leave them now? There is the potential for an extraordinary appeal, but given that all legal avenues thus far have been exhausted, it may be that even that will not be accepted. It appears in that case that their fate indeed will be sealed and they'll be executed by firing squad. Now, clemency has been handed out in previous cases in Indonesia under the previous regime of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, but not under President Widodo, who, as I say, is taking a much harder line. Now, in the event of execution, they will not be dragged out in the middle of the night. They'll be given 72 hours notice, 3 days in which they are able to sit down with their families, say their goodbyes before they are executed. Between now and then, there is the hope of an appeal, but as I say, even that appears to be forlorn. Stan Grant, Sky News.
The Prime Minister has dismissed as nonsense suggestions he would consider stepping down from the leadership if things don't improve for the government in the months ahead. It comes amid continued criticism of